Hello and welcome back to Grumpy Science. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the grumpiest of them all? Of course, it is always my colleague, Mark Tommerdahl, although I run a pretty good race for the Grumpy Champion. So today, what we're going to talk about is brain gauge technology. And Mark recently did a very lengthy, detailed webinar, but we're going to try to summarize the high points and some questions that have come in. The important point to emphasize is that we are really a neuroscience research group. I'm part of, but really Mark is in charge of it, which has been ongoing for many years. And what the brain gauge really is, I don't know, what would you say, like 100 pounds of
100 pounds of
neuroscience
stuff
equipment
crammed into something.
Yeah, crammed into what looks like, but is not a computer mouse. So when you're looking at, brain gauge, this is not a computer mouse. It doesn't even function as a computer mouse. What this is a room full of neurosensory testing equipment worth many tens of thousands of dollars that would normally weigh many hundreds of pounds and would be very difficult to use, and is all, sort of compressed into a small form factor that you can use in your home or your clinic. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and basically, like you said, this is a lot of stuff crammed into here. And the overall webinar does take an hour and a half. It's kind of long. It's, you look at it and go, I'm not going to watch an hour and a half video. It's like, so we're going to make a shorter one.
But we're nerdy scientists, so we can talk without limit about, nerdy stuff.
Right. And by the way, this is also an invitation to Grumpy Science, where we talk at length about a lot of stuff you may or may not be interested in. And we're very grumpy about it. So, but anyway.
Well, we'll keep talking anyway, because that's what we do well.
But, we sort of had a hiatus from Grumpy Science for a few months.
Yeah, I had a stroke.
He had a stroke, and things were busy on the farm, so.
Bored doing something else, so, we just, we took a break a little bit, took the summer off. Gets hot down here down south.
The main thing to think about is that there's a lot of online cognitive tools, and which we're not, which attempt to take measures of brain health. And we talk about
these online cognitive tools, and in fact, they're a matter of scientific study, the tools themselves. And what science shows, if you look at peer-reviewed publications that study the tools that people are using to study the brain, online tools in particular, and with sort of standard computer interfaces, the results are pretty clear, right?
Well, they're pretty bad.
They're very bad.
Well, the results are clear that they're not bad. So I just got back from a military health meeting, and everybody talks about how those methods don't work.
You can't use, your iPhone or your, family's laptop by itself with its normal interface hardware to tell you very much about what's going on with your brain. Right. Unfortunately.
And on the other end of the spectrum, this is the stuff we talk about in the webinar. On the other end of the spectrum are things like imaging tools. And if you've got any experience with imaging, well, it's kind of pricey.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two,
and if you're like me and you happen to have spent about an hour and a half with your head inside of an MRI recently, just saying, there's more than one of us out there that has.
Not a lot of fun.
Not a lot of fun. I know exactly how these things work. I couldn't stay still long enough to get a sharp enough image to do anything. How you can do this with a kid or anyone who's got a real problem.
But it's really good for gross morphological changes, which
it's a wonderful technology for what it's good for.
But think about this. One of the points I like to make is that with this device and its associated 3.5 million lines of software, which is right. Decades of research have been crammed into our system. But we can detect things like we detect big changes with things like cough syrup.
Yeah.
Which is, basically it's principally the same kind of sedative.
Let me put it this way: you're not going to take a little cup of, a dram of cough syrup, drink it, and then see any changes on an MRI or on any other image.
No. Or caffeine.
Or caffeine or something like that.
Or chocolate.
But you can see it with a brain gauge, because a brain gauge doesn't give you an anatomical image. It gives you a functional mapping.
So, it's much more of a functional tool. And so that's the main thing that we go through is what are the different measures, and the different measures look at different mechanisms of information processing. And those measures are pretty much validated through 65 plus papers which I mentioned you could read about.
But it's built on a much, on a larger pre-existing framework of research. So it's just the 60 or so papers that Mark is talking about is really the tip of the iceberg that really has a foundation of many thousands of
publications. We're really good at going back into the history books and looking at old papers.
Yeah.
But the main point of this is just
back in the day.
It's sort of a advertisement for that webinar, or it's maybe you don't need the webinar. You can just check out and what I did at the beginning of the webinar, I said, look, we've got lots of publications. You can go to the website and read those if you want, or you can read our blog, which tries to write layman's terms version of the papers, or you can watch Grumpy Science.
And we know what you do when you're confronted with an hour and a half of some grumpy old bastard talking about science. I know you're thinking, I already find you a discourse tiresome, but you know what? We're going to make it brief for you here. So basically, okay,
I think we're about done.
Are we about done? Let me ask you: were there one or two salient questions?
Yeah, there's always a couple of questions. A lot of practitioners, a lot of healthcare practitioners usually say, well, how can I work this into my practice? And I was like, most practices have waiting rooms. And those waiting rooms, this plugs into any computer or laptop.
As long as you have internet access.
Right, internet access. There are insurance rate codes that you can test people in your waiting room. And then you can look at their scores and see how their brain's doing before when you do meet with your patient, and that can be part of the consult. And you can also test people remotely. A lot of our doctors work with us like this feature because they have patients around the world and do like a telemedicine approach.
You don't have to go into somebody's clinic when you can take the test at your own home computer, because you see it's this hardware that we've developed that turns your regular home computer into an effective, reliable, repeatable, accurate brain testing.
Yeah, with laboratory equipment, that's basically, I would say,
the hardware.
I would say it's as accurate as any other researchers use, but most researchers in our world are using this now.
Yeah, well, actually, it turns out that that's true. Most people who are doing research in anything related to somatosensory functional testing, such as Mark is doing, actually use the tool that we've made because it's the best one out there. Least cost, easiest to use, but it's also the most accurate. I mean, we put a lot of time and effort into making it have the kind of mechanical, electronic, and time precision that's necessary to be able to really make fine distinctions in cortex function.
Right. And this was a webinar that was done on self-tact, and they basically said, they gave some promotional bonuses that are available that are discussed on the webinar. Plus, you get there's a time-sensitive discount code on there.
Oh, that ends on Saturday.
That ends Saturday.
And of course, you could watch this any day. So it's August 23rd, Thursday. So it would be, by the new math, August 25th. We
might extend it a day or two on our side.
Call him up and beg. He'll give you an extra day or two.
We're usually pretty easy.
But beyond August 25th of 2018, we are not obligated to give people a great deal on that anymore necessarily. But you never know. You can always call Mark and try to prevail upon his decency, such as it is.
Yeah, we tried that all the time. But be careful. Right. I gave you a ride.
That's right. Oh, that's right. I got to be nice to him, or I'm walking. All right. That's it. All right. Well, it was nice having you join us. Less than 10 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later.